the Ontario First Nations Limited Partnership is the organization that is responsible for the gaming dollars. They have annual meetings, and as one of the First Nations in Ontario, we are a shareholder of that partnership, so we take part in those meetings. And of course, the Assembly of First Nations annual assemblies. They had one in Winnipeg last December where Perry Bellegarde was elected national chief, and then there was one this past July in Montreal. And there will be one in December in Ottawa, and I'm hearing, but I haven't confirmed yet, that the one in July may be in Niagara Falls. And so we'll be the host for that. We'll be the host First Nation for that, so we have to figure out how we're going to be the host First Nation and what we want to do during that time. Some of the other achievements I just wanted to point out, because we are quite busy, is, you know, we always send our committee to the Good Roads Convention. And this year we want to also put up a display about our land rights. That's always held in February at the end of every year. We also took part in a panel at the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario annual assembly, which was held in Niagara Falls this year. I participated on a panel along with the regional chief and some other members of the political confederacy. We were very well received. In fact, we got a standing ovation after we made our presentation. I mentioned the political accord that was signed between the Premier and the regional chief. And in May, we were down at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and we were able to make an intervention on our land rights. And not only were we able to make that intervention, but when the Permanent Forum issued their final report, they included a specific recommendation in there that the states, particularly Canada, need to come to the table and settle land rights issues. Specifically, Six Nations was mentioned in that report. And so they were encouraging them to do that, and it was a strong recommendation that came out of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. So I think it's important that we continue to go to the international arena and shame Canada, because they go down there and try to profess about how wonderful they are and how all the services they provide. The missing and murdered Indigenous women is another issue that we've also become involved in. We took part in the launch of the Who Is She campaign, which is being organized by the Chiefs of Ontario to raise money. It was initially to do an inquiry on the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And we do know that the Prime Minister designate Trudeau has said that if he was elected, he would be calling for an inquiry 100 days after he's sworn in. So we're talking about how do we take part in that inquiry now. And I think one of the things we may want to do is prepare our families and the families from our community that may want to go and take part in that inquiry. So we're still talking about that, but the campaign is continuing. We also, here in our own community, we also realize that there's a lot of violence within our own community. And we've had our own share of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so that's where our efforts are concentrating on in our communities. What can we do to stop the violence? And we are working with some of our families in the community who have experienced this horrific tragedy. And they were really instrumental in organizing a concert that we had in July. We called it the Embrace Her with Love concert. And now they've become known as our Embrace Her with Love families, because they also helped organize the Sisters in Spirit Vigil that we held in Veterans Park on October 4th. And we're going to continue to work with those families because I think it's part of the healing process. So this is a big issue that I think that all of the community needs to really continue to concentrate on. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out with their recommendations, 94 recommendations this past year, and I was honored to be up at the presentation and walk with our residential school survivors in the Walk of Reconciliation. They were really grateful that I was there to join them. We've also had the mobile cancer screening bus has been in our community, and we encourage people to get out and get their cancer screenings done because cancer is coming almost epidemic in our community, the same as diabetes has. So I encourage everybody to get out and get their screenings done when that mobile bus is here, and encourage your family members to do the same thing. The skate park opened, and I'm so proud of all of those kids. That's why I wanted it on here, because you remember it was 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? And the kids came into the same assembly and said they wanted land to build a skateboard park, and they would raise their own money. So the land was designated for them, and they sure enough raised them over $200,000, and they got their skate park. So they're real role models, I think, in our community now. This year as well, we were the host of the International Under-19 World Lacrosse Tournament, and I am hearing already that they want to come back next year as well. I mentioned the Community Collaboration Committee and the work that we're doing with the signs in the community. I talked about that earlier. We also had the chairman of the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Commission who came down to visit us. Steve Williams, who is he's now a member of 4 Chiefs of Ontario on the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Commission. Commission, and he was instrumental in getting him down here. This past summer, we were also the very first nation in the country to have Six Nations First Walk with Pride and support our two-spirited people. So that was a good event, and I think we had a lot of people that came out for that. It was held on Powwow weekend. I also had the opportunity to speak at the Climate Change Summit of the Americas that was hosted by Glenbury in July. That was a conference that was being held in Ontario, and it was an international conference, which was a lead-in to the climate change conference that's going to be happening in Paris on the 1st of December. And we celebrated the 230th anniversary of the Mohawk Chapel. And we were lucky to have the Lieutenant Governor, Elizabeth Dowswell, here to take part in that celebration. And prior to her going to the chapel, we took her on a private tour of the residential school, the old former residential school, the Mohawk Institute, and she found that it was quite an emotional thing for her. Just talking about that, we wanted her to know about the Save the Evidence campaign, and we're really promoting that now because we're trying to raise money to repair the roof at the Woodland Culture, or at the old residential school, because we have decided to save it. We've raised, Six Nations Council designated $220,000. The city matched it. The province has told me they're going to match it, although we haven't got the official word yet. The Rotary Club in Brantford has donated money to that, as well as private individuals. And once they get the money to complete the roof, they then want to fix the inside and refurbish it so that it looks like the residential school when the kids were there. So they're looking for equipment, and then they're going to be calling it a museum of conscience. So that the fundraising is going to continue. They inundate it with tours right now, and I think once it's completed, the tours will just be out of the world. And I think once it's done, it will be the only one across Canada that will be, a refurbished residential school. So there's no timeline on when we get it done. We're just going to keep raising the money until we can get it finished. This past year, we also had, for the first time, May 1st it was designated by the province of Ontario as First Responders Day. And so this past year, May 1st, we had council provided breakfast and served breakfast for all our first responders and invited community members to thank them for all the hard work that they do, because they are essential services who are important to our community. We're also, in a couple of weeks, having our first annual Firefighters Gala. We're hoping to raise money for training and equipment for our fire services. And as I mentioned earlier, the North American Indigenous Games are going to be here in our community and in Toronto in 2017. Just lastly, I think another thing we want to talk about was our involvement in the Pan Am and the Para-Pan Am Games this past summer. We had a Pan Am coordinator, and Six Nations president certainly felt during the games. And this is some of the events that took place. We had a sports activation awareness event at the Tim Hortons Stadium in Hamilton in May. I took part in the arrival of the torch and the opening of the Pan American Sports Organization dinner, the welcome of Team Canada, the Athletes Village, and Newcredit invited us to their events as well. We were also in the Box of Honor at the opening and closing ceremonies of both the Pan Am and the Para-Pan Am Games. And the Tom Longboat statue, which was done by former Chief Dave General, had a prime spot in Harbourfront during the games. And Lieutenant Governor and everybody else went and visited that statue, so we were quite proud of that. That statue actually is in storage right now. It's going to be placed in front of the Youth and Elder Center once it's completed. We also took, as members of the Aboriginal Leadership Partners, we were involved in the Aboriginal Pavilion and the opening of that. We also had a cruise for our sponsors to thank them for the support that they gave us. And we were involved in the handing out of medals at both events, both Pan Am and the Para-Pan Games. The Women in Sports event is something that was done. We had a lacrosse team, the under 19 girls lacrosse team, who were trying to get to England but couldn't get in because the United Kingdom wouldn't give them passports. So they didn't go. And Minister Couteau, who's the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, really came to bat and helped support us. He gave us connections with the United Kingdom. He was calling himself there, he was calling the federal government, and he ended up becoming just as frustrated as we were. So during the Pan Am Games, we had brought the team to the Aboriginal Pavilion and we honored them under the Women in Sports, and Minister Couteau came and spoke to the women and told them that he would continue to fight that battle for us. We also had a festival at Chiefswood Park, and then there were just other opening and closing ceremonies. So it was, as I said, we made a lot of good connections there. I met the third vice president of the Pan Am Sports Organization, and I'm still in touch with him, and we're working on how we can try and get lacrosse to become one of the Pan Am sports in the future years. So that's something that we'll keep working on. So it was a good event, as I said, and we had a number of our dancers, musicians, and artists that were performing in Six Nations, and in between the Pan Am and the Parapan was Planet Indigenous, which also featured a number of Six Nations entertainers and artists. So that's it, I guess. We look forward to more achievements. I know there's a lot of more stuff that a lot of it goes in our newsletter that goes out on a monthly basis. So we look forward to more achievements for our community and continuing to improve the quality of life for all Six Nations members in the coming years. And as I said, as soon as we get the new Liberal government operating, we're hoping to get a relationship established with them.